Pickard, a creative director at Leo Burnett Toronto. You might know it, or we call it Leo now, but most people still know it as Leo Burnett. So my background's an art director, and for a very long time, or not a very long time, I guess a little while, I've been interested in computer vision. So as an art director, a little bit of hesitation as far as these models getting better and better at understanding images. So I'm interested in the difference between how I see an image, oops, I'm going to learn this eventually, and how an AI sees an image, sort of thing. So that's my potential competition coming along, and I want to understand as it's getting better and better how it's doing. A lot of my work involves video. So I'll take like a video, which is just a number of frames in a row, and I'll do a process called segmentation, which is where you, through a text prompt, you describe what it is that you want masked out. In the past, we would have to sit there and manually rotoscope everything. It's good we don't have to do that as well anymore. And so what I would do then is I'd take this, and then I run it through a vision model. And then it's looking at everything in that image, and then it's describing all of those things in text. And then I overlay that over top, remove the background, and then I've got this. So it's kind of a little meta thing where I'm kind of, you could look at it a little dark where I'm replacing the person with the description, or you could look at it, it's just a cool kind of exploration. I do a lot of stuff with skateboarding. I think skateboarding is cool. But besides it being cool, it's a very dynamic movement. So it's something that's really good to test segmentation. And so here you can see wherever I place the person, each one of those boxes is like a hand or skateboard or different type of part of them. And then here, I'm replacing all these aspects with descriptions of what's being replaced. Here, done some work with dancers, so you can see, starting with a video, starting to work with in-painting, bringing more and more of that computer vision over top of the image. And here, for all the design nerds out there, you probably know about a term called rivers, which is the space in between all of the text. And so the idea here was take a text description of what the video is, and then have elements in that interact with it going through the rivers. So little fun thing there. Yeah. So those are kind of the things I explore mostly, and they're sort of the closest related to computer vision I'm doing right now. I jumped ahead. So how I got interested in this stuff. So 2020, when the pandemic hit, I was lucky enough to be following someone, this guy up here, Derek Schultz. If any of you are interested in learning Comfy UI, learning video, talk to me after. He's in New York. He does amazing online classes. He's like the originator. He's so, but not originator, but he's humble. He's awesome. You can learn all the things. He teaches great classes. Anyhow, I was lucky enough to take this class with a bunch of talented artists. We were kind of figuring all this stuff out daily kind of thing. And I mean, things aren't as fast as they are now, but back then things were happening and we were excited. So we learned, at the time we were using these models called StyleGAN 2, and much more limited, but it was exciting time to be playing around with it. And I think what was unique about this moment was it was the first time that you'd probably heard about AI before. It was the first time that we as normal people could get access to servers and to use Python notebooks to be able to actually use that technology, sort of thing. Before then, it was kind of people in institutions and schools and stuff. This is the first time where, like, because of Google Colab and a few of these technologies, we could actually get able to use it ourselves. So it was pretty fun. So for context, 2020, this was cutting edge. This was exciting. This is called a StyleGAN 2 model. Two things that are important to know about these models is, unlike models that you would use today, which you would take a boat and a house and a car and you put all those things together to make a model, you had to choose one topic or style. If you mixed a bunch of things together, it was just a blurry mesh. So in this case, this person chose just faces, and they probably had a Photoshop file with 1,000 layers, and they manually went through and aligned every single one of those faces. So there was a whole curation process involved in making data sets, which I'll talk about a bit more, but I don't know, it was a weird thing because it was the first time I've done something digital that really felt like craft. in a weird way that like you really like worked with your data set, you really crafted and spent time to put it all together. And so it was a weird thing to, for me at least, to have a craft feel to something that was technology. The other thing to know about this is at this time there was no text to image. So if you wanted to find a output from the model, what you would have to do is you would have to output hundreds or thousands of images, download those, look on your computer, find the ones you like, and then you could play around with those, but there was no navigating the model with text sort of thing. So it's a little bit more challenging. Oh. And this is going to seem super random, but I'm going to get into it. What I chose to make my model with was a famous Canadian painter called Emily Carr. It's going to seem super random. We're going to get into why I chose that. Emily Carr, for people who don't know, is a Canadian artist from the West Coast. This is very much typical her style. She's sort of a bit of a curmudgeon and did a lot of work with indigenous cultures and stuff that was good at the time, but isn't dated, hasn't aged very well. And for me personally, as a child, I didn't connect. As a rebellious teenager, I didn't connect with this style of artwork. But as I get older and living here, like when I see this type of artwork, it reminds me of the West Coast and the place I grew up with and feels like home, sort of thing. So, yeah, that's Emily Carr. Let's see. Okay, now, these are two Emily Carr paintings. The one on the left was found in a barn and just sold a couple months ago for $350,000, and it was bought for $50. The one on the right is a painting my family owns, and there's currently it's worth $0 or about $0 sort of thing. So I grew up with this painting my whole life. It's valuable to me, but currently it's not worth anything, and that's because. That's regardless if we have a receipt when it was purchased from a reputable gallery that still exists to this day. But regardless of all that, unless you have it authenticated, it's really meaningless. It's worth a few dollars and stuff, but unless you can find a curator or a reputable person that will stand behind that painting and say it's real, it's not worth more than a couple dollars. Now I got to keep doing this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about traditional art authentication. It is the process where you have the expert eye. So that's someone that knows art authentication really well. It's a little bit of gut. It's a lot of education, and it's sort of, an expert. Next, provenance. That's a paper trail. That's evidence that they can tie back the history of that painting to where it came from and when it was done. Next, we got X-rays and infrared scans. Sort of understand if there was any work done on it, if it was painted over a previous painting or any additional information. And I'm always fascinated by pigment and material forensics, because if you know anything about art history, some of the things that are really interesting is certain colors were only available at certain times. So you can actually look at a painting, from the Renaissance, and if it has a certain red, that red would have had to been used by a certain material. So it seems like kind of boring, but it's actually kind of interesting. And it's weird that you were painting at a certain time and you couldn't get a blue, or you couldn't get a red, or it was really expensive. Anyhow, random. So this is going to seem a bit confusing, but I'm going to get into it. My idea I came up with, because at the time I was super hyped on AI, is can I train an AI model to work as a new form of art authentication? Basically, you see where I'm going. Can I circumnavigate the current authenticators and end up with a $350,000 painting myself? So the process for training a model, this is the StyleGAN one, is you scrape a whole bunch of images off the internet, and this case, high-res images of Emily Carr. I made sure not to include the image that was from the painting that my family owned. And then next is the training process. I just realized today I actually used a diffusion representation here, and to a bunch of those people who know, this was a GAN, so it wouldn't look like this. And I just kind of realized this afternoon, I was like, I don't have time to make a GAN representation, but this is just training. And this is just the process where it's learning that style. And we would use remote servers, and it would take about 2 weeks for us at the time to train a model. Then at the end, you've got your model. And this is, you can think of it as an infinite dictionary of all of the styles. So in this case, this is, every potential sort of Emily Carr painting that could be made. And this is where I got like the most interested, and this is where my idea from the whole authentication came from, which is if this is the whole model itself, and we can't navigate it through text, but we can use a method called projection. And what that does is you put an image on the left-hand side, and then it goes through and it finds the closest image it can that's a match to the image you supplied to it. And so my weird idea was, if this is really a model that represents all of Emily Carr's possible works, and I put in that image, if it's an authentic Emily Carr, will it exist in this model? It's a little bit magical thinking to, I know some of the more technical people in here, but I thought it was kind of cool. So this is the representation you can see, or the little visualization of the process. So you put in the reference image, and then it starts going through the model, image by image, finding the closest match from this one here to that one there. I'm going to skip forward because it takes a little while. Oops, I'm going to go back here and here. And this is the result I got. And in 2020, this was cool. Hopefully it's still a little cool to you. But you can see, the trees, you can see the lake, you can see sort of parts of the mountain in here. And it was good enough. I presented at a conference back then. And yeah, it was just like a speculative idea of the way we could authenticate art in the future. Now, skip forward 5 years. And while many in the art world are still debating whether AI-generated art is real art, that same art world is starting to use AI to authenticate human masterpieces. So currently, they are finding paintings by Rubens that was previously unknown using new vision models. And what they're doing is they're using that and then selling them for millions of dollars. So it's a little bit of a funny contradiction between the two, that they're accepting of the technology in one way, but not in another way. So just a little quick note on art authentication. It would use those previous processes I showed you. It does a thing called pixel level recognition, which is just small patches of the images it's looking at. And then it's doing confidence-based verdicts, which basically means it's best guess from a whole bunch of data whether or not that is the painting or not. In this method here, the data-trained objectivity is it compares real paintings with fake paintings and determines whether or not the painting is real or not. And so I thought, well, great. Now that people have done all this work, I can give them my painting and I can get a bunch of money. $350,000 sounds great. I reached out to this company called Art Recognition, which is one of the best. And they came back and it's a bit over $9,000. Which, I'm not in a position right now to gamble $9,000 on something that might come back being zero. So, I decided to do DIY art authentication, which is going to be me with my previous experience, but now flash forward 5 years and me figuring out how I can authenticate it myself because, I don't really want to spend that much money, but I still want $350,000. So I called it one-shot art authentication pipeline. Maybe I should, copyright that or something. And I'm using the similar kind of thing I described before, patch level probability of authenticity, which just means it looks at little bits of it individually and matches it to what it understands to be an Emily Carr painting. And then it does it for the whole painting. And then it looks at the style distance, which is like how much is this like other Emily Carr paintings. And then it does a combined index. And then it does a confidence range. And so what I did this time with my data set was I found artworks that are higher resolution and were from around like the time that my painting supposedly was from, because she had different periods of style, so I wanted to match that style as accurately as possible. So I got my data set. This is what I imagine is happening behind the scenes as it's doing my process. And then it was time, so I did some research. OpenAI 03 seemed to be the best model for doing this testing on. I was super pumped. This is where I was going to get my money. And then I got the results. So probability patch point is 48%, painting probability 44, style distance 31, and then composite index 46. So I got excited about it when I saw the confidence score. I was like, well, at least I got one good score. All the confidence score means is it's confident that all of these are right. So it's like, basically, like it's confident that I'm screwed. So, crap. So now, like, I don't want to give up, because I still, $350,000 is a lot of money. I don't give up easy. Like, what else can I do? So I started thinking about, going back to the more traditional methods like provenance and stuff. I got some paperwork. I mean, like, we did have it authenticated in 1989. Doesn't mean anything anymore, but, there was a time where people thought it was real. So I was thinking about provenance, and then classic. You're thinking hard. You can't sleep. All of a sudden you got an idea. Everybody knows you make a voice note or you write it down, or you will forget the next morning, so you remember to write that down. I remembered seeing online people doing this stuff with a new model. And so I'll just talk over what he's saying. Basically, he's using the 03 model, and if you give it a photo, it can pinpoint where that is from. And it's like doing as well as the best geoguessers in the world, or better than that. So people are being blown away. It's really good, for whatever reason, at being able to pinpoint that. So you might have an idea where I'm going with this, but I got a painting. I can't use it. It's not a photo. But then, of course, this week being, the world that we live in and everything's moving so fast, the new Flux context came out for people that know. Turn into a photo. Then I ask it to tell where that photo was taken. Because I'm like, we're like going back. We're going back to the future, maybe. I don't know. We're going back, and then we're using the future. So we didn't get a pinpointed location, but it's very certain it's around Banff, sort of thing, which is like far away where she normally painted. She normally painted Vancouver Island on the west coast, but it's still close to BC. It's part of it is in BC. So I'm like immediately asking, study the travels of Emily Carr and figure out where she's been. Like, let me know exactly where she's been, and I want to know, like, I pinpoint it. She's got diaries. Let's go through that shit. So went through. She did take a train through it. So I was disappointed. She took the train through it, but there's no evidence that she ever stopped or anything like that. So that was where I was starting to say, like, I've gone really far with this, but it started to get that sinking feeling that, this might not be a real Emily Carr. So then you start doing that thing. You do the, the intro to art school, or the first year of art school thoughts, where you're like, does art matter if it isn't worth anything? Like, what's it mean? Is the value to me? You go through all those kind of thoughts in your head, and you're trying to think about that. And so I did all that. I think I'm still processing it, still deciding how I'm feeling about it. Kind of wish it was worth $350,000, but we have to deal with the hand we're dealt. And just one thing I wanted to leave you with, and I hope it's reflected in this, is with this technology, it's really tempting to go in and say, I want a photorealistic dragon of a thing flying over a thing, and you're going to get that now. I would really encourage you to tell the stories that only you can tell, through your personal experience. Go through and learn that as a process for you learning. Use that, because this stuff's all getting, democratized. It's all getting more accessible. The thing that's going to be different is whether or not you can tell, personal and original stories from a unique perspective. If you want, you can go through, your family's history and discover that you've got some forgeries in your house and stuff. You can discover some interesting things. Yeah, and then just one other thing. I kept wondering, what would Emily Carr think of all this process and stuff? So, I've just been thinking a lot about this and just wondering what she'd think. So I don't think she'd be a fan. Thank you.